everybody. Today we're going to be doing an interactive notebook in your ELA notebook. So if you need to go get that, please do so. Pause the video and start it back when you're ready. You will also need scissors and glue and something to write with. So when you have those items, press play again. So what you're going to need for this is you're going to need two pieces of information. You need our plot target to glue at the top of your page, and then our plot diagram to glue kind of in the middle to the end of the page. You want to leave a little bit of space in between, but then also some space at the bottom so that you can write there. So go ahead and pause it to get, again, the plot glued at the top of the page and the plot diagram, the roller coaster, in kind of the middle of the page. So again, get that glued in, pause it, and then play when you're ready again. Okay, so when you have that glued in, I'm going to just read our target here. It says, I can use specific details from the story to describe the events in depth. And what that is the plot. So let's write our definition of plot first. So the plot is essentially all the events that happen in a story. So we're going to write that down. So plot, again, is all of the events that happen in a story. All of the events that happen in a story. If you need to, again, pause it so that you can get that written down, and when you're ready, go ahead and press play again. Okay, so then what this is it's a diagram kind of describing how a plot works. So I'm going to scoot it up here so you can see the diagram. So in our diagram, we start the story, right? So we have the beginning. So at the beginning, most of you probably realize there's always a beginning to the story. So then what happens is we kind of come up here and we get this rising action. So the rising action here, so this part right here, the rising action are the events that lead to the conflict. So I'm going to write that down on the bottom. Rising action. So hopefully you can see that. And again, those are the events that lead to the conflict. So if you need to, go ahead and pause that. The rising action are the events that lead to the conflict, right there, the conflict. If you need to pause it, go ahead and pause it, and then we'll begin on the next one. So after the rising action, then comes the conflict, because again, the rising action is the events that lead up to this. So the conflict here is what it's leading up to. And what a conflict is it's the problem the main character must solve. So a problem the main character and I'm going to put tries to solve because sometimes they don't solve the problem. Okay, so we have a conflict, which is the problem that the main character tries to solve. Again, the rising action leads up to the conflict, and then we're right here in the conflict. So we have the beginning, the rising action, it's going up, right? We get to the conflict. There's the problem that we're trying to get solved, right? So then after the conflict, we have the climax of the story. So the climax of the story is kind of like the turning point of the story. So this is the turning point. It's kind of like right when things get exciting, you can kind of almost see that the conflict is going to be solved, and then when the conflict does get solved, or sometimes it doesn't get solved, but it kind of creates a new problem, or a new problem is created because of how they're trying to solve it, we then get to the resolution. So again, the resolution here then, usually, all right, the resolution. So the resolution is how the conflict is solved. Again, sometimes it's not solved, but it gets better or a new problem arises, so how the conflict is solved. So when we say solved, that doesn't mean that like there's an answer to the problem, but the problem either changes or gets better, something like that. Okay, so again, if we're looking at the action here, so we have the beginning, this is all the plot here, this whole roller coaster. We have the beginning, and then there's some rising action in this part right here. The rising action comes to the conflict. The conflict, again, is the problem. And then we have the climax, which is kind of like the where everything is about to get solved. Your resolution, which is the actual solving of it. And then that goes right into the end of the story. So at the end of the story, or sometimes the text, then we have that. There's the end. Sometimes people call this the falling action. As you can see, it's falling towards the end. Okay, so I'm going to write falling action in here as well. So the falling action is kind of where the action is coming down. It's being solved, right? So we have the rising action here, the falling action here, to the end, okay? So again, this is the plot. A plot follows this right here. There's a start to it, rising action, so the action up to the conflict or the problem. The turning point is the climax, resolution, and the falling action, kind of how it's being solved, and then the end, how it wrapped up. Okay, so make sure that you finish this. I'm going to leave this here, so if you need to pause it and kind of look at the writing a little bit more, you can definitely do that. So again, here's the plot at the beginning, all the events that are these that lead up, that happen in the story. And then just kind of try to remember this roller coaster is kind of remembering how these fit in. And then the definitions that we had written down here. So if you need to pause it or go back, please do so. Also, don't forget to write on your table of contents what page that you put these on. Mine, for example, is on page 38. So in the front, I went ahead and wrote page 38.